So I've taken one of our templates that's now marked in a 3-step process, and step 1 is pink, and it has 3 places to mark. When you trace your fabric, when you trace onto the wrong side of your fabric, you're going to mark the start and stop dots, and also a place to leave a spot for your tag. So I've marked that on the wrong side of my cotton. I'm using a directional fabric, so I had to be careful to put the top of the shirt up by the top of the elephant's heads. And now I'm going to place my machine with the foot down. I'm using an open toe foot and cotton thread. And I'm just going to sew on the dotted line using about 10 to 12 stitches per inch. As I get to the curve in the corner, I'm going to lift my presser foot, adjust the fabric a little bit so I can go around that curve and still stay on the dotted line or on the sewing line. When I get up to where I've marked for my tag, I'm going to bring my stitch length up and put in about 5 basting stitches, and then I'm going to return to 10 stitches or 12 stitches per inch and continue to stitch on my sewing line. Again, as you get to the curve at the top of the shoulder tab, you may have to put your needle down and pivot and then go around the curve. As you get more experience with sewing, you can manipulate the fabric around the curve by putting your hands flat and really turning like you're turning a steering wheel of a car. But you can't necessarily do that when you first start. It takes a little experience. So don't worry about how fast or slow you have to go in order to stay on the line. Just try to keep your sewing smooth and as close to the line as possible. I'm going to pull that up because it gets stuck. Lift that a little bit. I do have my machine set to an automatic needle down, but this does not have an automatic presser foot. So I have to do that by hand. Now my sewing is done, and I'm just gonna grab a little scissor and cut my thread. I'm gonna remove my pins. I like to use flathead pins because they don't catch on my presser foot, and they're easy to see and easy to remove. But they will stick you, so you have to watch out for that. Okay, pins are all out. Now I'm just going to grab my pinking shear, and about 1/4 of an inch away from my sewn line, I'm going to trim the seam allowance. And I just hold the shirt in my hand as I do this, trying to make sure that I don't catch any other part of the shirt on the bottom side of the pinking shear. So you don't want to cut into it, but you do want to trim all the way around. If you don't have a pinking shear, you can trim with a scissor, but the pinking shear takes a lot of the bulk out of the seam allowance on these curves, and it helps to make it lie flatter and smoother when you turn the shirt right side out. So I'm just going to continue to go around. It's about 1/4 of an inch. So if you imagine you had 1/4 of an inch line around the sewing line, you would put the scissor right on that line and cut. If it's a little inside, that's fine. If it's a little outside, it's fine, but you don't want a huge seam allowance because it makes it way too hard to turn. Okay, so I'm coming back to the beginning where I started my trimming, and the last thing I have to do on this step is to trim and cut away my basting stitches that I put in for